After my recent video discussing how Ben 10 could save the DC universe, I thought it would only be fitting to do one on how Ben 10 could save the MCU, or more realistically how Ben 10 could slot into the MCU and how it would interact with the pre-existing Marvel universe. Similarly to the DCU, having been in a world where superheroes are all over the place is bound to be a lot of fun to see, particularly for Ben himself. The main character who comes to mind for me is Spider-Man, Ben and him sharing more than a handful of similarities. Otherwise, I can see Ben and the X-Men character Morph getting along really well. Morph being a shapeshifter in a similar way to Mystique, who can use a lesser version of the people he's transforming into's abilities. Though that does vary from version to version, I can just see this being an interesting dynamic between Omnitrix aliens and Morph's abilities. The people who really come to mind with Ben entering the MCU are Reed Richards and Tony Stark. I'm picturing Ben sitting in the Baxter building with his Omnitrix in some enormous device, being analysed by Reed, who's blown away with this new advanced technology from a different dimension. The other character who I feel would take a particular interest in Ben, or more specifically the Omnitrix, is Mr. Sinister, who's a villain who's just obsessed with improving mutants. I imagine he'd function as a more menacing and literally sinister version of Dr. Animo, like if Dr. Animo was more of a serious threat. Other than these, my final idea for a scene or moment before we get into my idea for what the plot could be, I can see Ben turning to Alien X, seeing Serena and Bellicus, the three of them chatting only to be interrupted by the presence of the Living Tribunal, who's one of the cosmic entities in Marvel that looks after the multiverse. I can also see the Living Tribunal being the reason that Ben was brought to the MCU, or even the reason he's sent back. As far as stories go, I've got two short ideas. The first being a sort of retelling of the Skrull invasion of Earth, or maybe a secondary Skrull invasion of Earth, playing out with Ben being taken to this new Earth, maybe by the Living Tribunal, establishing himself as a hero for a bit, stopping villains like the Serpent Society, teaming up with the Avengers and all sorts. Then during a battle against the Serpent Society, the Omnitrix glows yellow for a moment. You get a flash of yellow light and all of a sudden one of the members of the Serpent Society's leaders is revealed to be a Skrull. Ben scanning it and gaining access to a new Skrull transformation. This revealing the Skrull invasion somewhat early on in the grand scheme of things, forcing the Skrulls to start ramping up their invasion in a less secretive way. With the Omnitrix being able to expose any Skrulls disguised as heroes, villains, or any high-up people in whatever industry, I can see this culminating in a new type of Super Skrull. With that Super Skrull having access to 4 of Ben's alien abilities. You could keep things classic and give it Heat Blast, Diamond Head, Wildvine, and Chameleon's abilities. Keep it in line with the original Super Skrull's fantastic form mirroring abilities. I'd be curious what you'd want to see from these 4 aliens. I'd probably personally go for something like NRG Big Chill, some sort of electric alien like Feedback, and Humungosaur. Covers a few bases and I can sort of see a cohesive meshing of their designs with the Super Skrull. You'd have a moment with Ben realising he's really well experienced in fighting amalgams of his aliens, and even more familiar with any weaknesses of his own alien transformations. You then have a fight between this Omnitrix Super Skrull with Ben cycling through aliens as the fight went on, countering each of the new Super Skrull's attacks with different aliens. You could then have Ben as one of his more powerful alien transformations travel to the Skrull homeworld or base operations or whatever they have, and have this big moment like with the hybrid invasion with Ben confronting and speaking with them. But this time, rather than rewriting DNA, Ben could tell them about his dimension where there'd be plenty of planets welcoming of them that they didn't need to invade. For those of you who weren't familiar, the Skrulls lost their original homeworld and are seeking a new one. There's more to it than that, but that's the gist. The other story idea I had more closely ties in with the X-Men. This could be against Juggernaut, some Sentinels, or something more major like Apocalypse. The result being that Ben becomes an ally of the X-Men and stays at the school with the others. There could even be an acknowledgement of Ben's age and have him take classes growing close to the other students there. This is where I'd have Mr. Sinister get involved. I'm thinking in the middle of the night you'd have a villain, let's say Vertigo, capture Ben for Sinister. Vertigo having the ability to affect the nervous systems of living beings, giving her just enough of an edge to capture Ben without him activating the Omnitrix first. I'm picturing a situation where Ben is trapped in some huge machine, like when Vilgax captured him, with Sinister extracting as much DNA from the Omnitrix as he can get his hands on. You'd want a real darker tone here, a real hopelessness within Ben's escape. I'd have either the classmates he's grown close with or an iconic member of the X-Men like Nightcrawler coming to rescue Ben, with Ben turning into an alien that can do the most damage to the lab possible, trying to stop Sinister from making use of any of the DNA in the Omnitrix. Let's say it's Humungosaur rampaging through the lab. In a similar way to the way he treated Agrigor, he does Sinister, though this time Sinister doesn't get back up. Cut to a while later and you have an army of all these mutant alien hybrids storming the school, in a battle between Ben and the X-Men against Sinister's controlled hybrids. With it being revealed that Sinister from earlier was a clone, as much as it was just a clone is frustrating, it's very Marvel and it's very Sinister. I can see Ben being horrified by all this. It's a little too close to Vilgax's dream of using an army of Omnitrix aliens. Here's where you could incorporate the DNA repair sequence like with the hybrid, or you could go for this all-out brawl between the hybrids and the X-Men until eventually Ben turns the fight in their favour, defeating them using something flashy like Master Control. And that's where I'll leave it for today. If you have any ideas for where Ben in the MCU could go, I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching.